Kia ora, councillors. Welcome to our full council meeting for the 28th of March, 2024. We'll start the meeting with a Karakia. Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive.
Atamaria, whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, kia makinakina ki uta, kia mataratara ki tai, e he aki ana te atakura, he teo, he huka, he hohu, ti hei mauri ora.
Kia ora, thank you. Thank you, Chris. All right, councillors, just to give you the lay of the land for the meeting, we do have externals joining us from LGNZ to give us their update. So we will take that early in the agenda, and then we'll take the minutes and go on to the ordinary business. So just noting the health and safety statement, we'll take that as read. There have been no changes to that. So we'll continue on. Just going to note apologies. We've got apologies from Councillor Angela Strange for lateness and Councillor Mikhail Downard for absence. I believe everyone else is lateness. So we'll add Councillor Kneebone for lateness. I haven't heard any of their apologies registered. So do I have a mover for that? Councillor Hughes, second, and Councillor Marr. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda, just noting the reorder of events that we'll go through. Do I have a mover for the agenda? Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Hughes, second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, disclosures of interest. Any additional disclosures of interest beyond what's already been included in our registry? Nope. Okay, so we'll move on to a presentation from Local Government New Zealand. This is item 8.1 on your agenda, page 50. And joining us online, we have the Vice President of LGNZ, Mayor Campbell Barry. Sorry, Campbell. We've got Mayor Campbell Barry. We also have Susan Freeman Green and Simon Randall. So we'll just turn over to you, Mayor Barry, or sorry, Mayor Campbell.
Oh, thank you,
Campbell Barry. I'll get it right by the end of the section there.
It's really my parents' fault for giving me a first name for a last name and a last name for a first name. So, but no, thank you very much for the invitation to be able to speak to this report. We really do appreciate that opportunity. And you've introduced Susan, who of course is our Chief Executive of Local Government New Zealand, and Simon Randall, who is the Policy and Advocacy Manager. So I'm just going to give some global comments in addition to the report in front of us, and then we may cover off some issues or areas of interest, particularly from a regional council perspective, and then also, of course, answer any questions that you may have. So to kick off, just to let you know, these 4 monthly reports, which are being sent out to councils right across the membership, have been an initiative from National Council in the past few months, and this is really an additional way to a number of the other mechanisms we use, and emails and the likes, and newsletters, to let you know what Local Government New Zealand is doing for you and for the wider membership. So we do hope that it is helpful to have this report in front of you. As I said, I'll cover off some of the macro things. First of all, I'll just cover off some of the work that we've been doing recently that you may have seen in the press, and particularly around council's long-term plans and the challenges that we are seeing up and down the country, particularly when it comes to rates and the affordability and some of the cost pressures that councils are under. So we commissioned Brad Olsen, who's the principal economist from Infometrics, to produce an independent report to really delve into some of the drivers the drivers of the cost pressures that councils are facing around the country. And some of the findings from that report really demonstrated that councils are in a pretty difficult situation. The context is often different for each area, and they'll be no different for the Waikato, but also some of the problems are very similar. Some of the key findings from that report found that civil construction costs have gone up significantly more than what was predicted 3 years ago. So there are some highlights that were put in that report around bridges costing 38% more, for example. And I suppose the predictions from council's previous long-term plans, on average, it was around 20% more than what was predicted 3 years ago. So of course you build in a level of inflation and cost increases when you do your long-term plan, but it was much higher than what was expected then. From a regional council perspective, of course, from civil construction pressures, that of course includes doing things like stop bank work and other areas which you're heavily involved in. Another example would be 13% cost increase for labour as well, and some of the borrowing pressures which councils are under through increased interest and the likes. I suppose in response to that, we have been lobbying government really hard around having a toolbox approach. Reform is needed and to make local government more sustainable. And we've talked about GST sharing, bed tax, particularly for those council areas where they have an influx of visitors but don't necessarily have the ratepayer base to support the infrastructure to provide for them. Also, government properties paying their fair share in regards to rates, and that's been in the media in the last 24 hours as well. And also a number of other mechanisms we want to talk to government about to make sure that we can probably even up the balance a little bit, which is currently 10% tax take goes to local government and 90% goes to central government. But our responsibilities and any expectations on us have continued to increase over a long period of time. Talking to that, that really comes back to unfunded mandates. And to give one example, National Policy Statement on Freshwater Management, the expectations that government would require on local government would cost around 1.2 to 2.4 billion to implement, and then around 50 to 60 million a year to implement for local government across New Zealand without any additional funding mechanisms to be able to do that. And that is just one example of many that have happened over a long period of time that puts pressure on all of us. So in response to that, we have actually got NZIER, the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research, to do some work for us to understand the impact of those unfunded mandates and also what we can be doing around reform and change that. And that report is expected back, I believe, in late May, early June, and we're quite excited to be able to share that with everyone. The final thing I will touch on before handing it over to the team to cover a few other issues is just around the membership fee increase, which is obviously a discussion which National Council has each year, and all of you, I hope, would have received Sam's email, which covered the decision-making process with that. We did have a pretty robust conversation around how we manage through what is obviously a tough economic time for councils across the country, but also some of the pressures that Local Government New Zealand as an organisation is facing and delivering on its priorities. And like councils, we've looked to try and squeeze as much as we possibly can through efficiencies without impacting on those core functions and services that are valued by the membership. And I just want to acknowledge Susan and the team that they have looked really hard at themselves. I mean, a good example is changing premise not just once, but twice now to look to save around $130,000 per annum. Again, a way of trying to do things differently without impacting on those core services. And I know that the team have looked to not fill some key positions, and the rest of the organisation have really tried to step up to ensure that there isn't any slippage in the services that are provided as well. So just an acknowledgement of them. So what we are proposing is putting forward is a 15% increase. That does include Akuna, and that was a topic of conversation from National Council. Akuna has been obviously a professional development tool which Local Government New Zealand has offered and has had limited take-up. And to really make that sustainable, we needed to build that into the membership fee, and also it ensures that it gives every single elected member across the membership access to be able to utilise those tools as well, which we think is an important role for us to be able to play. So for individual councils, the actual increase will be different depending if you are already a member of Ākona or not. If you were, for a smaller council, it would be a very small increase actually overall. If you weren't, then it's more closer to that 15% mark. But happy to answer any questions on that. But before we go to questions, I'll pass it over to Susan and Simon.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks for that, Campbell, which was a good overview. And just a couple of points that I want to amplify before we move to questions. But first of all, can everyone hear me? All right. Is that okay?
Yes,
Yep,
thanks,
cool.
Susan.
That's great. I'm not in my normal place to have this meeting. So as Campbell said, the 4-monthly report initiative is a chance to actually give you a wide view of the work. And when we think about the work that we do in your service, we have actually just by National Council clarified our purpose. So there are 3 legs of the stool of the work we do in support of members. And so one of those is to champion, second is to connect, and the third is to support. So if you think about championing, that's all our advocacy work, and the rates work is a really key example of that, where we're thinking about not only how we engage with central government, but what our members, you know, how we engage with members and what's important to you, and also the public. So there are 3 parts to the advocacy piece. So championing is influencing, it's advocating, it's lobbying, in the full range of that, and it's also telling the stories about the value of local government, because we absolutely know that local government is not recognised in its entirety. It's taken for granted, and you bear the brunt. So really conscious in that advocacy piece that Waikato in the rates area has the lowest, one of the lowest, if not the lowest, proposed rates increase across the motu at around 6%. I think that's right. So I just acknowledge that. I think the average from our work with members is 15.3%. So that's advocacy. In the connecting, that's a full range of work we do, from our network meetings and our sector meetings through to our conference, to get you to all have the opportunity to share and learn from each other, and to actually just understand what's going on in the bigger picture. That's a really cool part of our role, and that includes some of the ways we communicate like this, and like keeping it local, which I hope you all get, our fortnightly newsletter. And then on the support side, that is the full range of everything. And I just want to also acknowledge that you have been the first council to undergo the reimagined council night to Korowai, and that, you know, really demonstrates your commitment to actually thinking about how you perform as a council and how you can improve, which we know councils across the country constantly talk about. They often talk about what others need to do and not actually look at themselves. So really interested in the feedback that you've given on this, and we thank you for that. It's been really useful for us. Ākona is another part of the support leg of the stool that Campbell has talked about, and that's growing exponentially. So what if you had a look at it in the early stages, 18 months or so ago, we had 3 or 4 modules. We've now got 17, looking to include 3 every quarter, and really keen to hear what would be useful for you as we continue to roll that out, and to grow it and make it useful for our elected members and our community boards across the motu. It's got a range of courses in it, from 101 for potentially new people to local government, right through to financial governance, the media tidbits, etc. So just want to give that big high picture overview. We want to answer questions from you. I don't know if Simon, you want to add anything that we've missed. So open to questions.
Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I'd just like to pick up on a comment made regarding the justification for rates increases by local councils and mentioning the cost of bridges increasing by 38%. Now, in my mind, it's obviously civil construction, part of infrastructure, but I don't understand why that's not being funded by borrowings and spread forward over the life of the asset. It just makes common sense. And if that's the justification that councils are using to support their excessive rates increases, then I think their thinking is flawed. And I'd just like your comments on that, please.
I can probably further elaborate on that particular stat. That was from Brad Olson's independent report, which I suppose painted a picture, and I've just given one example from that of the types of pressures that councils are under. I've got no doubt that most would look to obviously spread that cost, through borrowings, but it's not just rates which are under pressure, but also a number of councils' balance sheet in total, so they're reaching their debt caps and the pressures that come from that as well, with later year rate increases. So I suppose, that came from Brad Olson's independent report. It's not specifically being used apologies. It's our energy efficiency cost saving mechanisms at Hutt City in play. So hopefully that gives you a bit more context, Councillor.
Thank you. I assume you people attended the infrastructure funding or the infrastructure discussion group that was held, I think, earlier this week, where Anne Tolley presented a paper on a new funding mechanism which they've adopted in Tauranga, which is basically a privately funded mechanism to pay for infrastructure projects, which doesn't go on the council's balance sheet. Seems like an easy and equitable solution to some of these problems that are restricted borrowings that are restricted by overextended balance sheets from various councils. So I'm just making that observation because I think it needs to be explored by councils that are in financial strife.
I think you make a really good point, and certainly one of the things that we're doing at LGNZ is to look at a range of tools that are coming from councils, from regions, from different parts of the sector that meet different needs. You also appreciate your observation about the cost of bridges, say, and how councils manage their build and their infrastructure. I think, as Campbell said, it's the figures in that report are just illustrative of the range of pressures across the piece that are impacting to some degree, and that is one of many factors, along with interest rates and cost of living generally, and debt caps being reached. But you're right, there's a personal responsibility, council responsibility, and the broader environment to take into account as we go forward and thinking about it in creative and new ways. Simon, do you want to add to that at all?
Thank you, Susan, and through you, Madam Chair. The special purpose vehicle mechanism that has been used in Tauranga and also in the Wellington region does separate debt and does give councils more headroom for investment. That still results in sort of some higher costs for ratepayers, and so it's only really a mechanism for councils close to debt cap. For those councils that aren't at debt cap, it's actually probably more economic for them to borrow and use borrowings. I guess the key point which Campbell makes in the report is the cost of borrowing is increasing. And so whilst lots of councils will prudently debt fund investments, the cost of that in terms of servicing for ratepayers over the life of that borrowing has been increasing, and we've seen in Brad's piece the cost of borrowing increasing dramatically.
Thank you.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, two questions. Firstly, the unfunded mandates is something that we've often commented to government on when we're making submissions. You guys are doing a report ready for May. Do you have any preliminary findings on what the cost of unfunded mandates is being to councils throughout the country?
That's for you, Simon.
Thank you, Susan, and through you, Madam Chair. No preliminary findings at this stage. We're utilising 4 areas of reforms. One of them is the MPSFM, specifically the costs onto regional councils, and we're looking to work with your council to give us some depth of information there. So no early results yet. It's a forward-looking piece. So as central government has quite an ambitious reform program, it's a piece of work that will help us talk about where they put the costs of that reform going forward. So it won't give us a full picture and a full number, but there are some pretty big numbers already out there, as Campbell has alluded to, in terms of costs of reform in recent years.
Because that also applies to things where they've golden clams or cowrie dieback, where government was there and then suddenly they're not. So again, unfunded mandate. Second question, city and regional deals. Can you give us an update on where government thinking is with that?
What we know is that it is something that government is beginning to engage in, and we are expecting to see a draft framework. They're at the framework developing stage of that, and they have been looking at a range of different city regional type deal models from around the world, and they're interested in what's happening in Australia. They've obviously looked at the UK and other parts of the world. Like I think the Netherlands has some frameworks that they're thinking about. We're actively looking to engage in this work, and we've also done quite a lot of work around city regional deals ourselves. We have Mayor Andy Burnham, who's the Mayor of the Combined Authority for Greater Manchester, coming to a combined sector meeting. He's having a chat with Sam, your president, at the start of that combined sector meeting on the 11th of April. I was lucky enough to meet with him last year when I went to the UK on a personal trip and did a bit of a study, added on a bit of a study tour on some of the local government, central government relationship pieces. And he gives quite an interesting perspective on the length of time it takes to get to sort of full devolution and what the fundamentals you need are. So it'll be an interesting chat with him. But we are, we think this is a really interesting and important piece in the mix, and something that we're strongly advocating for. I don't know, Campbell, Simon, if you want to add to that.
Only additional thing I would say is that talking to key government ministers and the Prime Minister, it's very clear that there's no new money tree that we're going to be able to take from. So I suppose my comment and what I would share is that we just need to be realistic in regards to what this framework will look like, and also it's yet to be seen whether the government would be up for those larger devolution conversations. I suspect not at this point in time, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't position ourselves with a clear, I suppose a clear agenda of what we would like to see, even if that, is a longer term vision in how we want local government to be placed. But there has also been some comment around a number of cities and regions going off and doing their own thing and looking to pitch to ministers individually, and I think that they're sort of aware of that and conscious that there is a number of different expectations of what this could mean. So hopefully the framework will enlighten all of us and we'll be able to work to that.
So it's not a first up, best dressed as it was with Provincial Growth Fund. It's separate from that.
It definitely won't. It won't be that. And the government's really clear they're starting with actually a framework before we even get to that point. Simon, do you have anything to add to that?
If I could just make a comment, Chris McClay here, and hi everybody. On that issue of deals, we believe we've heard unequivocally that the government wants regions with their local government partners in it to have one voice and not for parts of regions to come forward with their pitching in. They want it joined together. We've heard they want it well planned and thought out. They don't want ideas. I'm just checking, is that what you're hearing?
Shall I take that first? Absolutely. What we're hearing is that they want to see that regions are doing the work, and they're looking at how it unlocks economic development, how we integrate across infrastructure, and how advanced and mature regions are in getting their own act together around some of the stuff. Campbell, that confirm what you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a fair reflection of what I've heard as well.
Councillor Nicol.
Thank you and good morning. I really appreciate LGNZ's work on working with central government. The power imbalance in the two forms of government in New Zealand really concerns me. I think it holds New Zealand back. I thought it was quite an interesting story in the paper yesterday with Auckland Council and Mayor Wayne Brown requesting funding for land that is not paying rates. And I was just wondering what conversations you are noting they are not in LGNZ at the moment, but what conversations LGNZ has had with central government on that topic, or anything you can share on that.
Well, Campbell might want to talk to this, but what I can say is that we've been advocating for similar stuff for quite a while, and we swung in yesterday with a press release saying, if you look at there's $1 billion of money around some of these things. I think his figure, Wayne Brown's figure, was 414 of potential GST return on rates, and we can tabulate that from the 2020, the earlier bits of data we have as $1 billion. Not sure that's been picked up yet, but I know that your president is keen to talk to that given any opportunity. I'm sure Campbell would as well.
Thanks for that. And just the second comment was, at the LGNZ conference last year, I asked a question of Kieran McNulty about something along the lines of why we don't see ministers coming to the LGNZ conference, and he made a comment around that it needs to fit in with their schedules, obviously. And I thought with the conference being in Wellington this year, that would be a great opportunity. If you had any thoughts about inviting them, finding a way to fit their calendars and giving that opportunity for all of those councillors that go to that conference to do a lot more of that relationship building that I would say not a huge proportion of councillors at the moment do with ministers.
we have certainly got that in mind. We've invited many ministers. We will invite local MPs as well. A number of ministers have 10 slots, as do some of the opposition speaking as well. So yeah, we should have a range in Wellington, but it always depends on their timetables, and quite often it's a popping in and popping out piece, but that's certainly on our minds.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Oh, we've got Councillor Angela Strange.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, LGNZ, for presenting this morning. I just had a question. Is this the first year we've seen such a public record of rates across the whole country?
I didn't quite hear that question. Is this the first year we've seen this type of increase? Is that what you're saying? Is that the question?
Yeah, just the increase, but just the awareness of the range of rates across the whole country.
Yeah. We have worked as a team really hard to be telling the story since about November last year. It's been quite a strong campaign of ours to tell the bigger picture, and to have the public get some better understanding of what rates is and what it pays for and how much they take it for granted as a way into these funding financing conversations and the school box conversation. And so we've worked pretty hard at that from the policy team in terms of getting the research and infometrics report and thinking about the drivers right through to the media campaign. I think we've generated about 50 plus unique media stories on this. So that's LGNZ has been really behind the noise you're hearing for the first time.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we keep doing that, because alongside, you know, all the comments you mentioned before about these rates rises, have you noticed any what's the word, history of rates being kept artificially low and just borrowing in order to keep the rates low, that has led to these sort of problems we're seeing nowadays?
I think I'll let Mayor Campbell answer that question. I can.
No, thank you, Susan. Just going back to your first comment, Councillor Strange, and this has been a really intentional effort to paint the global picture of what councils are facing. And we knew that was particularly important given, I suppose, the perfect storm of the pressures that councils are under and the wider economic climate. But I think this is a learning that we want to take forward each year and to ensure that helps with our advocacy pieces. I would speak to Brad Olsen's independent report. So this is his view rather than, I suppose, my view. You know, there is evidence to suggest that a number of councils have kept rates artificially low and look to borrow. And that has, you know, happened over a longer period of time. My council was one of them, to be quite honest. And that those pressures are now coming to us now because it's meaning that our debt cap is, you know, we're reaching our debt cap, and it puts a lot of pressure on us to have to try and play a little bit of catch up. So there is evidence of that. But what I would say is that the context of each council can often be very different, albeit we're playing within the same rules and playing field as well. So it doesn't necessarily, you know, translate from one council to another.
Yeah, thank you for that. Probably just a further question would be just highlighting that difference between regional council rates increases and city councils. I know within the Waikato we have had questions raised of our comparatively lower end of the scale compared to, say, our metro's increase. So yeah, maybe if we could just get a little bit of variation there in the commentary as well, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Cookson.
Good point.
Sorry, go ahead, Susan.
No, that's a good point. And you know, even within regional councils, there's massive variation. think it's really particularly expected to be pretty high, say in Parliament Canterbury. So that's well over 20%. So it is really context dependent per council, but absolutely take your point.
Councillor Cookson.
Thank you. My question would just be that the new government is definitely on a different narrative than the one previously. And have you got your head around how you question those ministers correctly? Because there's some wordings that if you use them, they're not very happy about what you're saying or suggesting in that. So have you picked that up quick enough and understanding of that? Because I know there's some things that if you say them to them, they get very angry very quickly. So thank you.
Mayor Campbell, we'll let you have the first crack at that one.
Yeah, really good question. I think that the team are working really hard to understand the government's priorities, and what are the boundaries. At the end of the day, we have a very centralised system of government. They have most of the power. We need to acknowledge that, but we also then need to be clear as a membership where we're going to make a stand on some issues. And that's something which we're continuing to talk about, and we should never shy away from obviously doing it. But there has been a lot of work on relationships. So I know Sam, as the president, is working really hard, to build that relationship up with the Prime Minister, the Minister of Local Government, and other key ministers. I'm doing the same. And I think the value is often in those offline conversations and chats and being able to pick up the phone to avoid exactly what you have mentioned, or putting your foot in it in a more formal setting or meeting or in a press release or the likes. So we won't always get that perfectly right, but certainly conscious of it.
Yeah, and just adding to that, LGNZ is non-partisan. We have to work with the government of the day, but what we would also say is that we are very aware. We work in a very political environment, and so that absolutely means that the conversations we have, what we prioritize, how we do that, how we manage that is really different according to the government of the day.
All right, if there's no more questions, I don't see any more questions. Hey, thank you so much, Campbell and Susan and Simon, for joining us today. Just, I suppose, to touch on a couple of things. Yes, we did go through the Te Korowai program. It was very extensive. There was quite a lot of effort that went into that, and we're still working through our process of incorporating that feedback. But I do appreciate that LGNZ has a facility that allows councils to assess their performance and look a little bit deeper into the way we do things. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Also wanted to acknowledge the voice that you provide in the public realm. Susan, I know I reached out to you the other day regarding your op-ed that you wrote, just addressing that that balance between the country's tax take between central government, local government, and how that compares in other countries. I think that that sort of commentary allows us to have richer conversations amongst our own communities. So thank you for that. And also thank you for acknowledging that we are reportedly the lowest rate rise across the country. That and I just want to clarify that that is not a reflective position of an absolute bare bones approach. We have that rate rise still reflects added investment into the areas that we have heard from our community are most important. So I think that it is a real credit to this council, but also even more credit to the amazing staff that work here at Waikato Regional Council that heard the message loud and clear from this council that we were concerned about the affordability issues for our community, but also really wanted to see us doing further work in the areas that are important to our communities and important to this council. So thank you for acknowledging that. Thank you for your report. Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate the continued engagement with LGNZ and have a brilliant rest of the day and a lovely long weekend.
Thank you very much. It's been great to be here.
Kia ora.
Thank you, mā te wā.
All right, councillors. We'll get back to the work of the day. So we're now on, oh, sorry. Oh, we need to, sorry, geez, thank goodness I've got you, Dave. We do need to receive the report for LGNZ. Sorry, I had a mover in Councillor Marr and I had a second in Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, now we will move on to the minutes. We do have, okay, am I taking all of these in one go? Am I
That's all the minutes.
Okay.
Three chunks.
Okay, so we've got confirmation of the council minutes for the 29th of February. Do I have a mover in that, Councillor Hodge, and a second in Councillor Strange? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, then we have in one lot, the minutes from committees reporting to council. So these are the Finance and Services Committee, Climate Action Committee, Strategy and Policy Committee. Those are being taken, or those are being confirmed as correct. Then we are also receiving the minutes from the Risk and Assurance Committee and the Future Proof Implementation Committee, and that all decisions made under delegated authority are noted. Councillor Smith?
Sorry, I just thought you said that we're saying that they're true and correct. Isn't that the role of the committees to say that the minutes are true and correct? All we're doing is receiving them. But I would like to raise an issue on page 28 of the agenda from the Climate Action Committee and make a point if I can. On item 10, Councillor Cookson and I walked in on this meeting, and I suppose I was hellishly surprised to see that there was talk in the presentation from the presenter about CO2 emissions from peat soils and how drainage and so on was impacting that. As that impacts directly on the work that Councillor Cookson and I are responsible with ICM, along with the others on that committee. I found it strange that that was raised in a way in which he and I hadn't been alerted to it. And it was interesting listening to the presentation. So I'm just concerned that had we not walked in on that and had we not looked at, we didn't know what was in the presentation prior to that. So how would we have known about that? And what appears to be
Councillor Smith, just to be clear, we are receiving minutes. We are not relitigating the contents of the meeting.
I'm not trying to relitigate.
And the agenda would have been published for climate action, and you're certainly welcome to review the video.
An issue, and I'm not wanting to talk over you, but I'm trying to raise an issue so that those who weren't present understand. There was matters in that presentation that I don't believe I could find in the agenda, and it talked about drainage matters. And so how, in the silos that we seem to have, does that information come across to integrated catchment management and be dealt with so that climate action doesn't go and act on or work with information that that ICM doesn't have? So how does that information come across so that with the whole organisation gets to understand?
Thank you. I'll let the chair of the Climate Action Committee respond.
Thank you. And yes, I did note that at the start of the minutes, it could have been worth adding that these two councillors walked in the last 10 minutes. So just saw the very end of that presentation and it's not noted on there. So we could correct that as well, actually. This piece most certainly was in the agenda, and we are all receiving all of the agendas and can have a look if we're interested. The other way, of course, is to have a chat with the chair which in this case, I'm surprised you haven't done before this meeting, to just say, hey, didn't like that. And so, because what it does is just build that relationship between councillors all the time about, hey, I think you might be interested in this. The topic of peat soils coming up in the Climate Action Committee was something that I had discussed early in the traineum about this, and noting that this is a CEO KPI, and the fact that we are all having a workshop on this next week really just reflects that in the Climate Action Committee, it's a piece that has enough of a climate component that it was interesting to raise it there. But as we discussed during the presentation, and as I've often discussed with Karen Bennett, the director in charge of this, is that we aren't planning on doing further work on that topic in the Climate Action Committee. It's actually one that would be continued further in the Integrated Catchment Committee. And so I think it's just an oversight that perhaps the chairs of the Integrated Catchment Committee haven't been kept in the loop enough about the fact that this is underway and is coming. Something that's easily rectified, though. I think it could be worth Karen maybe having a comment.
I think you've laid it out appropriately. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor
On both
Nichols.
sides?
Councillor Clarkson, not wanting to extend this any more than it needs to, but.
Yeah, so this is a question really relating to those minutes. And I'm referring to page 33 and the exceedance of met sulfur and methyl in Lake Pongapai. And at the actual meeting, I asked a question about, will this be considered an environmental performance committee? I'm just seeking some reassurance that that was noted, my question. I asked that question specifically, and that there would be some process where we might get an update on that issue as well.
That refers to the Risk and Assurance Committee minutes.
Sorry, yeah, that's another.
And I do recall
but,
that.
I do recall you raising that. We don't have the action items associated with that meeting reported in these minutes. There is an actions register, so we'll ensure that action is.
So that's all it was.
Is
Just seeking
recorded.
clarification. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, do I have a mover?
Before you go there, Madam
Yes.
Chair, sorry, just a point of clarification. There is no Strategy and Policy Committee minutes in our agenda.
Just looking to Democracy Dave here.
I may well have omitted those minutes by the looks of it, as Tracy has also pointed out to me. So I will remove those from, as item C, from point 1 and forward them to the next meeting.
Very good. Nice eagle eyes there, Councillor Marr. Well done. All right, do I have a mover? Councillor Clarkson, and a second. Councillor Nichol, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, so we will now move on to recommendations to council for adoption. So this is recommendations from the Finance and Services Committee, 21 February. This is on, I have page 18, is that right? Page 18. So this is that on the recommendation of the Finance and Services Committee, the Council approves the forecast budget adjustments as set out in the report. Just noting that A, B, and C that we see on the screen. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hughes, second, and Councillor Cookson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. Okay, we'll now move on to the Health, Safety, and Wellbeing Report for February 2024. This is item 8.2 in your agenda, page 74, and we are joined by Marie Fullerton. Welcome, Marie.
So again, I'll take the minutes as read, but there's a couple of important points that I'd like to raise. One was the Bacardi White Island prosecution and the media release.
Just bring the mic a little bit closer there. There you go.
Oh, right, thank you. Is that better? Right. The media release recently, where Judge Thomas ordered $9.5 million in reparation, and commented that this incident has raised national awareness of the need for PCBUs to work together to coordinate, cooperate and communicate. And I think that's one of the key learnings for overlapping duties. The other is we had 18 incidents in total, 10 events, 5 injuries and 3 near misses. Of the events, there were 2 related to public aggression and violence, and one where staff were working on a beach and were approached by a member of the public who started tampering with their equipment and reading documentation. The staff dealt with that very well and resolved the situation. The other is what you won't see in our statistics is the 2 reports to WorkSafe. So we haven't had any notifications to WorkSafe in a very long time, and both happened in the same month with contractors. It was escalated immediately, both those incidents. One happened late in the month on the 21st of February, the other one on the 27th of February, escalated to the CE and to Greg Ryan, who was directly involved in the management of those 2 incidents going forward. So if you're wanting more information, Greg can supply that. Because there's been progress since writing the report.
It might be useful just to go over, Greg, just see that what the incidents were. I understand that WorkSafe have decided not to. There's no need to look at one of the matters. You might like to discuss that.
Yeah, so we did have two notifiable incidents, both involving 2 different contractors. The one probably more significant one, as it's described in paragraph 26 of your report, which involved some poles that were held at height, which came down. Fortunately, they were near misses, and so I guess it's important to reinforce that there were no injuries or otherwise involved in these particular incidents. We did take this particular incident very seriously. We immediately engaged with the contractor involved, both at a staff level, project management level, but also at an executive level. We met with the contractor executive within the week to discuss our concerns, particularly to focus on any systemic issues that may need to be resolved or addressed. WorkSafe was involved, and at this stage they have identified that they may look to undertake a site assessment, although no date has been confirmed for that at this point in time. But for me, I'm very satisfied with the response that has come from this particular contractor. Certainly a significant commitment has been made in terms of lifting their game, in terms of the kind of matters that were identified through the investigation that has been completed. So satisfied with the progress that has been made for that particular project. The other one was a little bit more straightforward and is described to you on paragraph 26 of your report. Again, it was notified to WorkSafe because of the involvement of electricity. In that situation, WorkSafe have closed that and won't be taking any further actions in regard to that one. Again, a thorough investigation was completed in this situation. A very clear work plan was in place, including a hazard assessment for the work that was being undertaken. The contractor at the time decided to deviate from that work program, and that resulted in the incident that we saw occur. So it has been good to work through these. As Maria said, we don't have these kind of incidents often, and so it's good to use them to make sure that we have good processes in place in terms of both notification, but also making sure that we're investigating these to the fullness that's required.
Thank you for that. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you both. And yes, it is very good that these are quite rare, these notifiable events. And hence, I'm just keen to understand, because there's obviously a notifiable, these are notifiable events that we hear about in the monthly report, but there might be the types of notifiable events that we might want to be notified of before the report comes out. And I'm just questioning really whether what your policy and thoughts are on whether something comes to this council ahead of time, because it's so serious, it's worth us knowing about, noting that our role is slightly different to a board of a different kind. Yeah, what's your thinking there of when you might talk to us directly earlier?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Nicol. It's a good point you make. The responsibility probably lies with me as to what I feel I should let you know. I'll take that on the chin.
Yeah.
I think that what we did was we've notified them to work safe, and we wanted to see their response. And like the one where the excavator had a power line, they decided not to follow it anymore. But perhaps I should have let you know about the other one.
Sure. Just if you're clear, then I'm comfortable. Yeah. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Councillor Cookson and I were made aware of it by the director responsible.
Good to be aware. Thank you. If it's okay, I did have one other question. It was just on page 77. It has a comment on paragraph 25. There were 2 notifiable contractor events. These do not appear in the month reports above as they involve contractors. It's mindful that contractors are still covered. Should we have in this report that kind of detail with contractors in a format so that it isn't just in the ether?
Yeah, so the incident reporting system is for staff, but we do put contractor incidents in there, but we separate them out so it doesn't affect our statistics in terms of trending analysis. So we certainly get them through Dampstra and we require them to be put into Dampstra.
Yep. I just thought in the report layout, it could be interesting to have a contractor and a staff section so we don't lose sight at our level, perhaps. That's all.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the report from council? If not, I've got a mover in Councillor Marr, second in Councillor Cookson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Marie. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Greg. All right, we'll now move on to item 8.3. This is on page 82 of your agenda. The adoption of the 2024-2034 long-term plan consultation document and supporting documents for consultation. We've got Janine Becker and Clarence. Thank you for joining us. Anything you'd like to take us through?
Probably just a few points, Madam Chair, in terms of from when the report was written to where we are today, and also just the document that we have in front of you. Clarence can obviously talk to the audit opinion. That's probably one of the key changes from what we were reporting. Pleased to say that I guess through the work of Audit New Zealand and the Opinion Review Committee, the opinion that we have in relation to the LTP is an unmodified opinion, now with only one emphasis of matter, which is in relation to the uncertainty of future Te Huia rail service funding. So the other matters have been closed out to the satisfaction of all those involved, so that we're now in the position of just that one emphasis of matter. In terms of the consultation document itself, we have been working very closely with Clarence and his team over the last couple of days just to land the final changes on that. And so the version in front of you does differ from what you had in the agenda, hence the copy of it, which will hopefully be a helpful resource to you as well over the next little while. Just to call out those changes, so on, I think it's page Oh, here's an extra, page 7. Sorry, page 6 has got a number, page 7 hasn't. In terms of the infrastructure strategy, there's some extra content that's been added there, which has been pulled directly from the infrastructure strategy around the condition of our assets, changing weather and the implications of that, as well as land use changes, and the impact on levels of service as a result of the changing weather, plus reference in there around the climate action roadmap. And then on page 9, which is a snapshot on the impact of rates, we have updated the graph that's provided at the top of that page to include both the increase in our total rates revenue, as well as the way that council communicates that change to existing ratepayers, so net of growth. It's been probably the bane of Clarence's life over the last little while, been really careful to ensure that we have been able to maintain what council has already communicated in terms of its long-term plan and those rating impacts, with something that from an audit process, I guess the hot review panel in particular think is more appropriate to be signalling what those future rates may look like, particularly beyond year 3. In terms of procedurally today, we have the letter of representation that needs to be signed by the chair. The recommendations are effectively to approve the document pre-audit, receive the audit opinion, sign the letter of representation, receive the audit opinion, and then adopt the audited long-term plan inclusive of that opinion for consultation, which will start on Tuesday next week. But Madam Chair, perhaps if I just invite Clarence to address council from an Audit New Zealand perspective.
Thank you, Janine. Morning, councillors, Madam Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. As Janine said, we worked pretty closely together to get to this point today. And I just want to thank Janine and the team, because there's been quite a few back and forth, but we got there in the end, which is really good. The other good news is, as Janine said, it's unmodified audit opinion with only one emphasis of matter. The emphasis of matter, I think there's no surprise with that, with the uncertainty about the funding from Whakamutunga towards Te Huia. And I think it's a good result to be in. So just well done, and thanks, Janine and your team.
All right. Any comments or questions? Points of clarification? No? All right. Just do want to acknowledge I did hear everybody was burning the midnight oil on this last night, hence the last minute and here you go. So thank you very much for your commitment to getting us to this point today. Obviously, it was a key decision for this council to enable us to engage properly with our communities in relation to our plans over the next 10 years. So thank you for getting us there. Much appreciated. Do I have a, sorry? Oh, certainly.
If I could just make a comment, if any councillors need to understand what that change is in the snapshot of rates revenue, I suggest that you might want to talk with Janine and myself. I think Audit New Zealand, the auditors have wanted to make sure things are very clear to the public, unambiguous. Having the 2 graphs, I'm not sure how that gets achieved, but just to make sure yourselves understand the difference in the graphs. If you don't understand it, please ask.
I do have to say that graph, because I've already had a few conversations in our community, and that graph is always a little bit perplexing to people, and that detail of the first 3 years and how that allows us to be quite clear on the impacts there. It it flummoxes our communities when we're talking about a 10-year plan that seems to have all of the guts of it in the first 3 years and a fair bit of ambiguity from their perspective on what the outer years look like. Councillor Dunbar Smith and then Councillor.
Yeah, just to say that the submission form is nice and clear. It's quite nice and easily accessible, so well done.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I'm prepared to support this going out, whilst I don't support some of the, at this stage, some of the proposals. I do believe it's a good document and we need to get it out. And I do, one of the things I have concern about, of course, is the representation of 6 to 6.5% in the first year when I've done my own look at my own property, and I've got a 21% increase on my bottom line. So the use of averages is quite misleading, and I would encourage every ratepayer to look at the rates calculator as portrayed on agenda page 95, to look at their own individual properties and how it impacts them. So I am happy to move it so that it can get out there, Madam Chair.
All right, we've got a mover and Councillor Smith. Oh, sorry, Katarina. Councillor Hodge, did you have a comment?
Yeah, a comment. This is good. I've just finished 2 LTP plans with our district councils, with 2 of our brilliant staff, Tracy and Phil, and the PowerPoint that we put up was really quite simple. It was very simple, very easy to understand for them. The questions that came back were relevant to the slides. So I think whoever's out there doing this with our district councils, the pieces we have in that PowerPoint is really good. So, and then transferring it to here, it's just as good. So I can't wait to send this out to our people. And thanks, Janine. And thanks to Tracy and Phil for accompanying me on my 2.
Right. All right, we have a mover and Councillor Smith. I'm happy to second. Oh, or Councillor Hodge, get that in there. Awesome. All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Well done, team. And as I understand from Wendy, they are printing out the official copies of this, and there are some extra copies for counselors so that you can distribute it as you're talking to various groups in your community and spreading the word. So yes, Councillor Cookson.
Madam Chair, would be able to have some of the QR cards.
Oh, those QR codes, yes,
Boxes
absolutely.
of them, please.
Great. Those are really, really handy. The little business card shaped
We're
size
market
things.
things next week, so I
Yeah.
can deal with a heap of them. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Okay. I think we're going to continue on. So we're now to item 8.4. This is on page, what page am I on? 8.4, page 136 on your agenda. This is a revision to standing orders in relation to the quorum. We have Molly to talk us through.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou. This item is very straightforward, so I won't labour the detail. We are looking for an update to standing orders to enable virtual attendance in governance hui to be counted as quorum. This has come about because there is now legislation in place that enables virtual attendance to be counted as quorum. You might recall that in the past, quorum has been defined as physically present in the room. And so this is the update that we're seeking.
Great, thank you. And of course, even though we may enable virtual attendance, we also, I'm sure, all recognize the value that we get of all being in these chambers when we can, recognizing that there are extenuating circumstances at times. And so it's a great enablement, but I will always advocate for people, bums on seats in the chamber. It's always much more effective. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was interesting during COVID, I took this issue to our Mayor, Alan Sanson at the time. He took it to the mayoral forum and had support, and Waikato District initiated a motion to LGNZ conference, and that motion eventually passed with the support. It's now, and that was then sent on to government, and it's now nice to see that this has been recognised by government, and it's a very practical thing to do. It's something that we must do. So happy to support it, Madam Chair.
Councillor Hughes, then Councillor Dunbar-Smith. Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I support it as well. My only question is, how do we verify, how can we have absolute certainty that the person that we see online is actually the person who's there? Because it's easy enough to cover your, put your moniker up there, which doesn't certify that you're actually part of the meeting. I'm just... Well, that's not included in the standing orders, though. If that was in the standing orders, then I'd accept that that's absolute proof. But I don't see how we've got absolute proof at the moment.
Given that there is no specific reference to what you're talking about in standing orders, it would be up to the chairperson of the meeting to make sure that they are satisfied that quorum and presence is verified in whatever manner that might be. So it could be along the lines of what has just been suggested, asking people to turn their videos on, or to confirm by speaking to the meeting that they are present. So just because it's not specifically set out in standing orders, I don't think it prohibits council chair people to take the necessary action. However, if council is, I guess, more comfortable to have something specifically set out in standing orders, we can certainly do that.
I think so. So even though it's not in our standing orders, the advice we're getting is that the chair of whatever meeting, the committee, subcommittee, et cetera, could use that as a method to satisfy themselves. And as long as the chair is satisfied, that allows the meeting to continue, right?
Great.
Thank you.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, just a question for Mahi. So for the last year, we've been having people that are online and being recorded as being here. Does that mean that's null and void the past year, if we're only just passing this now?
No, this is in relation to quorum, not attendance.
It's got attendance there as well, item number 13, and voting.
It's a good question that you ask, and just for clarity's sake, the legislation has been changed previously to enable online participation. What hadn't been changed at the time is the virtual attendance in relation to counting as a quorum. So that's the change today.
Okay.
But we have had in place online attendance for quite some time.
Councillor Marr.
Yeah, thank you. I have the same concerns as Chris does around that space on the screen, etc. And I notice 11 point or paragraph 11, number 4, it also allows an audio link. Yeah, I'd prefer to see it as an audio visual only, and then the chair can go to ask for the video to be turned on. So just my comments. Page 137, it's just, it mentions. Yeah, that's in our agenda.
What's been changed? We've got to follow the law.
But in our own standing order, surely we could leave audio out only and have audio visual.
Not if the law says it's required, if I can, Madam Chair.
Mm.
If the laws said that's what it's got to be. So if I could go to Mahi, perhaps if we go to Mahi and ask if that's what the law has actually been stated, then we're stuck with it.
One other thing that I would add is that we typically do have video and audio attendance as opposed to audio. We would very rarely have audio attendance, but I guess it is a way of enabling participation in the event that technology might be limiting us to be able to attend in the manner that we normally do. During my time with council, since this technology has been enabled, there wouldn't be that many examples of where audio attendance was necessary. But certainly I'd encourage enabling participation as opposed to disabling it.
Thanks, Molly.
I mean, I'm just reflecting back to the dark days of COVID when we were all online, and if all of us turned on our videos, it would just grind to an absolute halt. And so I suppose that us not having our cameras on, becoming the practice if you were not speaking, was a way of enabling the meeting to progress. And so we do have a history of doing this. But as I've pointed out, and as we've discussed, any chair at any time can request that a speaker put their camera on or do what they need to do to feel that they are satisfied that those are in attendance, or those people that are being marked as in attendance and counting towards the quorum as we're addressing in this matter. Each chair can satisfy themselves in that. Councillor Smith.
Oh, sorry.
No. Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd probably just echo your points, Chair Pamela. Yeah, requiring a video to be on seems to be low trust model. You know, we're all elected in by our communities, so often having your video on if you're going between meetings, you know, driving to a meeting is not safe.
Can be distracting. Yes.
So yeah, I would be reluctant to make any changes at the moment. And just noting, as you say, that the chair of any committee can, if it is essential for the quorum, maybe the video could be switched on then, or video switched on at voting time for those votes to be counted as well. But to require a blanket video on all the time, yeah, in my opinion, is a step too far at this stage.
All right. So have we got a mover for this?
Happy to move.
Councillor Nicol. Oh, I thought you, oh, he did. All right. Councillor Smith moved. Councillor Nicol seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. We are now on item 8.5. This is on page 139. This is in relation to attendance at the LGNZ conference and annual general meeting. And Molly, are you taking us through this?
I can. I'll stay in the hot seat. It's another straightforward report. We come to council with this request every year. Essentially, the LGNZ AGM dates for 2024 and location have been set. This year, the conference and AGM will be held in Wellington, 21st to the 23rd of August. We anticipate receiving more information about the conference in due course, and we'll certainly share that with council when it's received. But in the meantime, we are really keen to get approval, well, a selection and approval of the attendees to the LGNZ conference so that we can get in early and make necessary arrangements. And with that, we're also looking for some delegations to be put in place for the AGM itself. And so Waikato Regional Council is entitled to 4 delegates for the AGM. One is the presiding member, an alternate to the presiding member, and just in any event that the presiding member is unable to attend, and then an additional 2 delegates. And so over to you, Madam Chair, to facilitate the discussion going forward.
No, we do have in that paper, we do have information with regards to who attended this conference last year. And so I would, as we all can't go, I would encourage those who haven't attended this in the past to consider attendance at this upcoming conference. The chair always attends, and I do intend to attend this this conference. And our deputy chair, Councillor Clarkson, you said you were interested in attending, given the timing works out. So I'd certainly endorse your attendance and would endorse myself and yourself as the presiding delegate and the alternate delegate. I think that would be appropriate if this is the decision of council. Not that it is the decision of council yet. I'm just making a suggestion. Councillor Marr?
Yeah, I'd certainly be interested in attending this year.
So, sorry? Because so Bruce did not attend before, and Warren, you didn't attend. Robbie, you did attend last time. Is there anybody who has not attended? Councillor Hughes? Anyone else who did not attend last time that would be interested? I'm not saying no, Robbie. I'm just opening it up to those who welcome, Councillor Kneebone. We're just talking about the LGNZ conference and just noting that trying to encourage those who did not attend, council members who didn't attend last time, if they are interested in the August meeting, to attend this time. So just bringing you up to speed with where we're at. Anybody else interested in?
I have been before. It's as well because the young elected members have their hui down there as well. I'd be interested in putting that forward.
Great.
Through you, Madam Chair,
yes.
I'll be in attendance through another entity, so just to save council some money, but I'd support
Great.
Councillor Nicol if she wants to attend again. Keeps us in the young elected and some other forums.
Sure. Yeah, I think you are the only one. Are you the only one around our table that's still eligible for young elected members? Good. Fly the flag. All right. And I also am cognizant that because we're planning these things in advance, we all do know that things come up for people. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it is useful to have a few extras just to fill the void if somebody has to drop out. Okay. Yes, Councillor Strange.
Yeah. So are you calling for more people, or you feel
I am not sure. What's our budget like? What's the number that we normally send? What's the go?
There is no limitation to the number of councillors that can attend the LGNZ conference and the AGM. The only limitation is on the number of delegates that can vote at the AGM. With regard to budget availability, we do have an annual allocation specifically for LGNZ conference attendance. There is enough to cover 5 fully, so fully cover 5 registrations, but that doesn't limit us to 5 elected members because each elected member also has an annual allocation of professional development budget. And so what we would do is cover the remaining registration fee equally amongst you through your professional development allocation budget.
Pardon me? So, but are you saying that if there is more than 5, then everybody contributes out of their professional development
budget
in order
allocation
to support that 6th person coming?
Yes.
So I just am, I I just am putting that out there because I do know that some counselors have exhausted their professional development because they've chosen to undertake certain training opportunities. So I wouldn't want to get us into a situation where
They're gonna pay themselves.
somebody gets into the negative because we have decided to add an additional person.
Can I ask a question too?
Councillor Hodge.
So in here, it's got the councillors for the conference from the 21st to the 23rd. And then it's got the number 3 is on the 21st of the same time. Why are you adding more people when you've already got 1, 2, 3, 4 on the top? Because it's all at the same time. Are you saying, or is someone saying
These are
that
two
the people
different-
at the are they held different times? Because if that's the case, Pamela can't be at both either.
No, usually they're held
Concurrently.
Yes, yeah.
sequentially, I guess. Is usually
Therefore,
they
why
have.
are you wanting extra people to go?
It's just if people are interested in engaging and attending the conference and having that opportunity to access the learning and the networking that
So
those
will
types of
take
things facilitate.
care of the budget then. If you've got the first group already sorted, then I don't know whether if people can afford it out of their own budget, then fine. If they can't, then why bother?
We could add an additional clause that says subject to budget availability. So that gives us the flexibility after the decision to have a look
To work it
at
out.
the budget availability and make sure that we've got it covered.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Just for the resolution, sorry. Yeah, if you could add my name and then noting Councillor Smith's kind offer of his professional development budget.
You can't
Duly noted.
new tricks.
Well, we could work it out behind the scenes and happy
Yeah.
to drop off if it
Yeah.
doesn't work out.
Great.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
I'd like to move a resolution, Madam Chair, that those names up there are the persons in the item 2, and that item 3 is taken up by the first 4 names on that list. And I don't really care about the subject to budget availability. So I want to see that removed and seek a second, Madam Chair. The reality is this is what's the word? Democracy in action. I have attended these in a former council. I don't find them particularly useful for information. It's nice to rub shoulders with a number of people and catch up, but it's a nice, and I'm a bit cynical here, but I don't want to see the opportunity for that to happen to others. So, and quite happy for you to use some of my allocation because I don't see that I'll be dipping into it too much. And that's not being arrogant. That's just reality for me. So.
It's recorded. Councillor Mahuta, did you have?
Just happy to second Noel's resolution and note that it is a good conference for us to, I guess, be present, push out for relationships and understand all the announcement in our sector. So thank you to those councillors for putting your hands up. Kia ora. But I'll second the resolution for progress, Madam Chair.
I think it should say subject to financial viability though. Otherwise you could have every council taking every single person.
It's coming out of their PD, so up to that allocation, whether they can come.
A long time to sort out a few dollars.
We do.
But we take 2 seconds to spend millions. And this is another one of those
True.
situations.
It's true. All right, we do have a mover and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. We feeling all right? Can I just keep powering through? Fantastic. No, we've got it. 8.6. Right. All right. Okay, great. So this is item 8.6. Right? Yeah. 8.6 page 142 on your agenda. This is the standing delegation to hearing panels. I got Molly again.
I'm looking around
Yeah.
the room. My name's not on the report, but I'm happy to talk to it. Because I think this one might be pretty straightforward as well, and I might just throw to
Right.
Tracy.
Tracy, do you want to?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I thought Dave was going to be an octopus and present his own report, but I can understand why not. Yeah, Madam Chair, as Marley said, this is pretty perfunctory, straightforward delegation. The delegation to strategy and policy didn't extend further enough into hearing panels being able to conduct the business for policy matters. So we have had this report put in front of you. For those who eagerly have read their strategy and policy agenda, you will see that the constitution of the hearings panel, particularly for the regional coastal plan, is a matter we'll discuss next week. This report has been peer reviewed by Simpson Grierson, who you'll recollect have recently reviewed our procedural delegations manual, particularly with that RMA focus for Jonathan Ridling. So, Madam Chair, it's a pretty straightforward matter.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Can you advise me, Tracy, in relation to the dams hearing that we had a week or two back, how does this impact that? Because that was a subcommittee of the strategy and policy, and we've made a recommendation in relation to policy. So are we going to get retrospective approval for what that hearing panel has done?
So again, for those eagle eyes who have read their Stratton Poll agenda, 250 pages that went out yesterday, the minutes from the hearings panel for the dams will come to us next week. That was constituted under the Local Government Act, not the Resource Management Act.
Okay, that's good answer. Happy to second.
All right, we have a mover in Councillor Marr, a second in Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Oh, and just by the way, I have been assured by Democracy Dave regarding those strategy and policy minutes that we tried to pass again earlier in the day. We did pass those last council meeting. We just thought we'd revisit it. Let's just play it again. It was so good, we thought we needed to hear it a second time. All right. So this is the last agenda item. We will not need to go into public excluded because we have approved those public excluded minutes in our previous discussion or previous approval. We did that previous. Yes, we did. So this is item 8.7. This is on page 146. This is the co-management co-management land management. Oh, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Strategy and implementation plan. So we have Sarah and Greg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, councillors. So this is a paper that is a follow-up to some previous discussions we've had around our strategy that we've developed alongside Waikato Tainui in terms of managing co-managed lands, much of which overlaps with our scheme land. And so the purpose of this paper is effectively to seek council endorsement of this plan, which will then enable and embolden your respective members on the co-governance committee to seek approval for that as a second step. So that's as per the recommendation that you see on page 147 of your agenda. Madam Chair, I'm happy to take the report as read and open up for questions, unless Sarah, have you had any particular areas you wanted to highlight?
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, page 151 has got a map showing orange Waikato Tainui, blue Waikato Regional Council, and green-ish other users. So earlier in the document, it talks about some private landowners. I presume the green is private landowners?
So the green shown there is any ownership other than Waikato Tainui or Waikato Regional Council. So that includes Department of Conservation and also private landowners. So a lot of the larger areas that you can see there, like the, I guess, larger green area above the orange circle, that's Whangamarino wetland, which is owned by Department of Conservation. And then just sort of lower to the left, that's Lake Whangapai, which is also Department of Conservation. But there are some smaller, I guess, land areas which are in private ownership as well.
That's right. And some of them seem to be to the south, a whole lot of smaller little lake ones. I just want to know, how are the private landowners being engaged in this process?
So with this process, within the strategy, it notes that where we can assist with, I guess, any engagement to share, for example, learnings as to how councillors approaching this, that we will. But predominantly this strategy and implementation plan is for the settlement lands which are on Waikato Regional Council managed lands. So the other councils, whether that be Hamilton City Council and Waikato District Council, they also have requirements under the Waikato River Settlement Act to have agreements in place and process to work on these lands. So we're primarily focusing on our lands, but if there is an opportunity to share with others and support other activities, such as those involving private landowners, that is allowed for in the strategy as well.
I just wonder whether your Waikato catchment subcommittee would be interested in this paper, for example. Is that relevant? Just a thought. Yeah.
Councillor Nicol?
Yeah, just as a member of the relevant JMA that this has come from, and noting that the development of this is about a decade overdue, really would be happy to move this one. Happy for more discussion too, but just really want to say thank you to Sarah for the work she did on this, since it was attempted and then some info was lost and then it was all cobbled back together into what is a really coherent document and implementation plan that's easy to follow. And I'd look forward to seeing in future JMA meetings to be delivered on. So just that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Councillor Marr?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just page 149 and item 23 around the resourcing to support restoration, the options and associated funding, which is going to come to us outside the LTP process. And then referencing that back to page 147, where we're being asked to delegate decision making to this JMA. Is that going to be around that funding?
No, so council will be considering that funding as part of the long-term plan process. And that was to the extent of the recommendation that was made by the JMA committee, I think before Christmas. It was acknowledged that it is a decision for this council to make around resourcing.
So it'll sit outside that delegated decision that we're being asked to give today.
Yes.
Yeah, if I could add, at the workshop that we had not long ago, what was discussed is that anything that would be different to the LTP currently proposed would come through the CE submission around these restoration funds, should they be different to what's been projected.
Just for clarity, and I think I've got this right, I'm sure Greg or Janine will correct me if I'm wrong, it's a small amount of money that is that we already have in baseline in the LTP. The question will be, is that sufficient? Does there need to be more? And that will come through.
Yeah, we're currently undertaking that assessment right now, and we'll provide you advice. I believe the discussion with the JMA was very specific in acknowledging where the decision sits with regard to resourcing. So I believe there was very good clarity on that one.
All right. So we have a mover and Councillor Nicol. Do we have a second? Councillor Kneebone? That the report be received and that the strategy is endorsed. Yes, Councillor Kneebone?
I just note, I think that's probably quite constructive to share the strategy with the committee. Absolutely, yeah.
All right, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Fantastic. Well done, everyone.
Madam Chair, you
Yes.
said that the public excluded minutes had been addressed. I don't recall them being addressed, and I'm not sure that we can.
We've done that, we've been through this before,
Yeah.
that we can, as long as there are no matters that somebody wanted to discuss in those, there are no recommendations that come out of those minutes.
They don't automatically then become public.
No, they do not. No, just the decision to approve them is
So
public.
I don't recall that being a part of the resolution earlier in the meeting to do that. Can we have that clarity, please? And public excluded it. Okay, no, accept that. Thank you.
All right, well done, team. That has us all wrapped up at 11:12 a.m. Good job. Nice. So much for a short working day before the long holiday. Good stuff. All right, we will close.
working.
Just hang on. Just hang out before we get too excited. We will close with a Karakia. I can just get counselor's attention again. This counselor's attention again. We'll close with a Karakia.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Ona hea mai te uru tapanui, kia wātea, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te hinanaro, e te ara takatū, koe rā e rongo, e whakaaria aki ke ronga, kia tina, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e.
Thank you very much, counselors. Thank you, staff. We'll declare the meeting closed at 11:13.